I had my first midlife crisis, age 35. It was 2021, another lockdown. The world felt tiny, the days were endless, and like so many of us, I had far too much time to think. So I did what any rational, well adjusted adult would do. I went out and I bought an off road motorcycle. Not a sensible one. No, I bought a giant, monstrous, ridiculous adventure bike. And so began my love affair with throwing myself enthusiastically at the Welsh trails. The operative words being throwing and enthusiastically. It wasn't always pretty. I broke a few bike parts and bruised a few body parts. But I was saving a fortune in spas and mud treatments. And because I was so deeply, wildly excited about this new hobby of mine, some would call it an obsession, I started posting about it on LinkedIn, where we usually make ourselves look prim and polished. To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what was going to happen when the strategist with the PhD starts showing up in a helmet covered in mud. But the reaction surprised me. People leaned in, they liked, they commented. I drew a fresh audience. And the conversations I was having were becoming more interesting, more layered. It wasn't that I had changed, I hadn't. I was still the same person with the same work and the same expertise. But I'd simply stopped editing out the parts of me that didn't feel immediately on brand. People didn't see me as less credible, they just saw more of me. It made me easier to read. And that was starting to lead to more interesting clients and deeper, more meaningful work. At the same time as I saw the shift of my own audience, I noticed a pattern in the organizations that came to work with me. I remember sitting with this one client of national architecture practice, looking at their messaging together. They'd been in business almost 80 years. That's 80. Extraordinary expertise, deep relationships with their clients, great internal culture, and the kind of work that genuinely changes the trajectory of the people and communities they work with. And yet, they were still being overlooked in favor of other competitors. And when we looked closely, the issue wasn't competence. Like I said, they had that in spades. The issue was that nobody could see their amazing depth. Not because it wasn't there, but because it had been edited away. Internally, that depth felt messy, the layers felt complicated. So over time, they learned to simply project the tidiest possible version of themselves. We've all seen this out there. Safe headline, a generic description that probably tells us that they're passionate about something. Something 1,000 other organizations could also say. Instead of embracing their complexity, they'd flattened themselves. All the nuance that made them and their work distinctive, their philosophy, their perspective, a particular way of doing things, had become invisible. And that meant that from the outside, they looked like everyone else. Now, here's where things get interesting. At the same time as I was seeing this flattening becoming more and more prevalent in the market, the world started craving authenticity. If we look at the Google Trends data over the last 5 years, we can see this dramatic increase in searches for the term authenticity. And that makes sense. We are living in a world in which perfectly presentable but totally artificial content is everywhere. Generative AI is becoming extremely good at conjuring up things that look real, entire companies included. But paradoxically, that just makes us humans look harder for things that are actually real. And authenticity, psychologically speaking, is one of the strong signals we have to tell us that somebody is genuine, that they make sense. When we can see beneath their surface and what they say aligns with what they do, we feel more connected to them, we remember them better, and we trust them more. And these are all great things for organizations to have. So naturally, everybody wants to be authentic. But how do we actually do it? The dictionary definition is no help. According to that, authenticity simply means the quality of being genuine, trustworthy, or real. It's not exactly a roadmap. So that leaves us uncertain. We go back to what we know. We polish, we streamline, we file off all the sharp corners, and we flatten our companies until we're easy to explain. And by doing that, we remove the exact signals that make our authenticity visible. After seeing this again and again in my clients and in the market, I started asking a question. What is it that makes some organizations and people feel unmistakable? Not shouty or louder, a bit flashier, just compelling. And I realized that I was looking at the same structure every time. They all had substance. Their work was excellent. They had a particular way of doing things, an ethos, if you like. They all had a distinct perspective, something that was unmistakably theirs. And they all had a legacy or a mission that gave those claims weight. And I began to think of it as their soul, not in a mystical sense, in a structural one, as a framework to harness and grasp our authenticity and make it deployable. S stands for substance. Yeah? Your capability, your expertise, the quality of the work itself. That is your foundation. It is every organization's favorite thing to talk about. But unfortunately, substance alone is rarely sexy. You are expected to be competent. So we go looking for more layers. O stands for operational ethos. The values that shape your decisions, the trade-offs you make, your goals, your motivations, your work ethic. Two organizations can offer the exact same thing, but feel very different because their ethos is different. One optimizes for speed, the other for care. One for short-term outcomes, the other for long-term impact. And people can feel the difference, even when it's not fully articulated. Then there's uniqueness. That is the perspective that only you can bring. Your voice, your worldview, your story, your personality, your quirks, your perspective, your preferences. This is what we love in our friends. And yet, it's usually the first thing organizations edit out. Because, and we've had this enough today, uniqueness requires courage. It means accepting that not everybody will agree with us. It means having a point of view and standing for something. And to muster that courage feels messy. But to see somebody display it, that is magnificent. And finally, there's legacy. Your track record, your reputation, your mission. The proof of everything you've already achieved in this world and the change you have yet to make. Legacy is what gives everything else weight. It turns promise into proof. And we can see the power of these elements when one of them is missing. An organization can have enormous substance, but without uniqueness, they are indistinguishable from their competitors. Another might have great uniqueness that attracts attention, but without substance, they don't feel very trustworthy. Ethos without legacy can feel inspiring but unproven. Legacy without uniqueness can make a firm respectable but invisible. But when all four elements are visible and aligned, your amazing depth becomes legible. People don't just understand what you do, but why it's important and why you're the ones to do it. And that's when you become magnetic. Not because you've simplified, but because the whole picture finally makes so much sense. We tend to think of new beginnings as reinvention, a new strategy, a new identity, some dramatic pivot. But often, growth doesn't require us to become someone else. It simply requires us to make sense of the whole of who we already are. Our substance, our ethos, our uniqueness, our legacy. And when you finally make all your layers visible, you stop being predictable and you start being magnetic. And that's my invitation. Not to simplify yourself into something smaller, not to edit away the parts that feel complicated, but to make sense of the depth that is already there. Because in a world increasingly filled with things that look impressive but feel hollow, depth becomes a signal. Uniqueness creates attention, courage creates attraction, alignment creates trust, and you start being magnetic. Not because you scrambled to stand out, but because you finally made the whole of who you are visible. You decided to bear all aspects of your soul and to turn them into a rich tapestry that makes you unmistakable, unforgettable, and unignorable. Thank you.